Now, the next speaker is Comply. Now, I like to think that Tom is sort of the entrepreneur I would like to have been if I had been more courageous to abandon law. And Tom is certainly too large. I love to bring Tom into class to meet with my students because he's sort of the poster child of what I want my students to grow up to become. He is a law grad, and he found an angle in the law, an ever-evolving angle in the law, and he's turned it into what I think will be quite a successful enterprise. So, Tom, tell us what you're up to.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So Comply was set up, and I didn't put together slides for this. I wanted to show some live examples of what we do. Comply was set up originally around the FTC's Testimonials and Endorsements guidelines that were updated in late 2009. What these mean is that people have to make disclosures specifically about their material connections between the person who's posting information and the brands or products that they're talking about. So if somebody is incentivized, if they're an employee, if they receive gifts or samples, or they're paid to make posts, which happens often in the marketing context, they need to be able to make those disclosures, and they need to be able to make them not only in blog posts where it's slightly easier, but even in tweets and Facebook status updates. So here we see an example. These are live actual programs. This is a program where Rusty, who is a surfboard manufacturer, was brought into a Budweiser program. In this program, they have people who make their own beer, who are talking about the process, and they brought Rusty into this program to talk about it. So here, he's actually sharing a photo, which I'm not going to show you, and then he included a disclosure. Now, we do have a format that allows you to not use two links. In this case, it just wasn't set up that way, but normally we would use one link instead of two. But here you see the Comply link. You click on that, and that then opens up a disclosure that brings you information. Normally we would have more disclosure text to describe the relationship, but it gives you at the very top a basic description of what that relationship is. It actually shows you who Rusty is. It would show the social channels that Rusty is on, as well as the brand that's associated with it. So normally you would see more language here, and you'll see some other examples with that, and then some context over why these people are talking to you, what's going on, how they're related to each other. Another example, this is from the same user, from the blog that they use. So in this example, they've explained what's going on. This is actually one of those photos that was shared, and then they include again the link, the Comply link that would link back. You click it, link you back to that same disclosure. The use that we were developed around is all of these third parties, and we actually do a lot of monitoring and ensuring not only that a disclosure is present, but even more importantly, when a disclosure is omitted. The more common use case that we've seen is Contestant Promotion. So again, this need for legal and disclosure language to appear along with content in short form. So here you see an Australia contest. They have they want to make sure that the rules are clear. We've actually incorporated in Twitter cards. So down here you see that we're actually pulling in a badge, pulling in the abbreviated rules so that people are actually getting some context. But to date, the platforms haven't agreed on a format. There isn't any official metadata that goes along with a post. So we still rely on the URL as the primary source of the disclosure. We do also own a number of plain language URLs. So in this case, rules that indicates that there are official rules. Again, if you click on that, it would bring you to the rules disclosure page. So here it tells you how to enter all of the official rules for the program. And we always encourage people in this how to enter box to put plain language and not just the dense official rules, but actually explain to people that there's no purchase necessary, you must be 18, you must be a US citizen, and then you can they can drill down into all the other detail, but you want to give people some sense of how they enter, what they do, what's actually going on right up front. This is another example now, again, shifting to a different use case. This is, we work with Bank of America family, so we work with US Trust, we work with Merrill Lynch and Bank of America brands. In this case, they're sharing out information, and their legal and compliance folks wouldn't allow them to share with anybody who is a third party. So if from their Twitter account, they couldn't point to anything that was off one of their branded sites. On their branded sites, They knew that all the disclosures were there. They knew that all the information was there. But when they had interviews on CNBC or MSNBC or other content that they wanted to point to, they couldn't actually do that because they didn't know that the disclosures were there. So in this case, they have their president is interviewed on, in this case, CNBC. Again, the Twitter card pulls in the basic information about the abbreviated disclosure. But if you click on this Comply F link, which indicates that there's a financial disclosure, it then frames the page. So you see their disclosure up at the top. It explains that you're being brought off of one of their sites. It explains that you're not being given any financial advice. All of that text, and to the point before of sort of running the lawyers out of town, we leave it up to lawyers to write all of this copy. We provide the documented process. We provide the white boxes for people to fill in the information. But here you see that there's a disclosure up at the top. I can scroll down into the content. The video is playing right there. And if I want the full disclosure, I can click on full disclosure, and it then brings me to all of the information, including this relationship disclaimer that explains that we are not actually part of the bank itself. Moving on to other examples, Pinterest obviously has been an area of lots of interest for marketers, an area of lots of concern for lawyers. What we've done with Pinterest contests is allow people to not only make sure that they own the images, so people are doing pin to win contests, they're putting up their own image. In this case, Mary Kay has included an image that has all of the details about the contest. But this is the tweet itself that one of the users put out. When that person repins, the interesting thing is that on Pinterest is one situation. So you have an image and a piece of text. But when that content gets syndicated out, when it goes onto Facebook, when it goes onto Twitter, if you're just relying on an image, that image may not be showing. So what we do is we always include that link in the body of the message. When people repin, they're asked to put that link in as well. So anybody who's exposed to the contest, right as they interact with it, can get direct access to all of those official rules. One of the other things that was challenging is that people were not able to get information on where to reach people who are entering their contests. So we've actually added an entry form as well directly on the rules page. Again, as this goes out, this is the actual Pinterest view. You see it here. You see that they've put you click here to get the rules. They have the rules link. And I have an example of one that I've repinned. And you see that the contest rules go along with each of these posts. These are all comply uses. Each of these posts, when you repin, that link actually goes along with the content. We really try to make it easier for people. So what we've done in the last couple of months is we've actually announced a Hootsuite app. So if you're using Hootsuite to publish information, you can actually pull up, and this logs into your Comply account. This has all of your actual disclosures in it. You can post from here. So we can create a new disclosure. So I can name a disclosure. I can pick the disclosure type. I can add any notes that I want to go along with that. I can search my existing disclosures. So for example, I have one here that I can pull up, and I can zero in just on the one that I have. So if I'm participating in multiple programs, I can find that and access it really easily. I can access my Comply settings directly from Hootsuite, and I can also publish directly from here. So if I go to this one, I click on the arrow, I can actually use as a disclosure. I can actually set up one of those referring links. So for example here, if I want to use this disclosure, I can use Y. And this will now create a new URL using that same disclosure. And I've now created a post that has that new disclosure that will actually frame a page similar to how you saw it on the banking side. We also have, outside of Hootsuite, the ability to use a bookmarklet. So here I have the Comply site. I can actually click on Comply Bookmarklet. It will cover part of the page, and it gives me access again to all of my Comply disclosures directly from the page in any browser.
Thanks, Tom.
So you're telling me I've been mistakenly adding HTTP in all of my Twitter Comply references?
It depends. So most platforms have become intelligent on this. but we still struggle. Sometimes it won't be the platform itself. Generally, Facebook and Twitter will automatically link, but within Pinterest, within Instagram, you have some challenges, and also sometimes when you use, not in Hootsuite, but when you use other platforms, sometimes they'll actually struggle with that. And with Pinterest, if you don't put in the HTTP beforehand, it won't display as a link. But if you, but it will display in the post without the HTTP. So they hide it, but you have to put it in order to make it a link.
Okay, I thought Twitter was making it difficult for us to be able to do that. So.
No.
Maybe this is obvious, but I just want to make sure I understand how it works. The intelligence as to whether or not compliance is actually required, that's entirely based on the user. You simply provide them with a facility to disclose, but there's no intelligence that's determining what should be disclosed on your site, right?
I wouldn't know that I don't know that I would call it intelligence, but no, it's.
I'm using the wrong words. What I mean
No,
is there's no system that's automatically doing this. There's a person that has to hit a button and say, I want to disclose this particular item, so I'm using your system to make it easier to do it. But they're the ones making the decision.
Right. We've devised a system by which you can document a certain process, but we don't determine what language you use or how you go about it. For that matter, we also do monitoring of third parties. The third parties that you designated will generate alerts if they've mentioned a product, but they don't mention the disclosure. But we don't weigh in on how you affect those, how you follow up on those alerts, what you do. We'll document all of your actions, but we don't actually automate the process of review. And we don't provide any legal advice.
Okay. And the other just quick thing I'm wondering about, I don't recall who it was, but I think I read quite recently that the CEO of some public company that disclosed something on Facebook. Netflix.
Yeah, so it was Netflix. So he posted on Facebook in advance of the public announcement that they had reached 1 billion streamers.
So have you tried using this also for those types of disclosures, that companies would feed everything through this type of platform? Or?
That's an interesting challenge, because my grandmother lived to be almost 107, and she was very wise, and she always said, there's no guarantee against stupidity. A CEO should know better, CEO of a public company should know better than to pre-announce, earnings or revenues or subscriber or streams or, any of that information. So there's no way to really, to guarantee that nobody's going to slip up. What we can do is in particular in the employee context, we can monitor when you have not just the CEO, but you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees who are actually on social networks talking about your brand, actually monitoring and making sure that they are not going off the rails. And if they are, that you're becoming aware of it.
More questions?
I'll go on.
Switch.
What's the revenue model? Is it subscription or?
It's subscription based, so we handle, and the product has grown. Obviously here we're talking a lot about compliance, but the product has grown from straight compliance to actually it's sort of both an oversight, which includes the compliance and management of programs, as well as the insight. So the managing, the analytics, the collecting of information, the measurement of the programs are the two components, and we charge for those actually a little bit separately. So you can run a program with one or the other, or a combination of the two. And it's based on a monthly fee based on the number of programs and number of participants in a program, as well as at the enterprise for a sort of tiered use. So if you have an idea of what you're going to do in a year, you're going to use these corporate channels, you're going to have this many advocate programs, we can estimate that out so that you're not surprised with a bill at the end. But it's all based on monthly and based on use of the platform.
Volume.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have an easy one. When did you start Comply? How long has it been around?
So we started in October of 2009. It was actually a crazy little side project. I was doing a lot of work bringing brands and bloggers together. Took about a year and a half for it to actually become a more viable business. We then raised an early round of funding, seed round, and then earlier this year raised a Series A round of funding. And it's just going from there. So it was just me in the beginning, sort of running around, working with developers to develop a very early version of it. To now we have a team of 8 based here in New York over in Chelsea.
Cool.
Great.
VC backed?
Yes.
So raise your hand if you're not a lawyer. Oh, raise your hand if you're a lawyer. I think we may have more non-lawyers. I didn't know that. Okay. Good. Yeah. All right, good. This is exactly what we want. Lawyers and technologists sitting in a room together, figuring out what works for us.